Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. It's a new year, and with the new year comes a lot of new travel opportunities, so if you are looking to plan a trip this year, this is definitely the video for you. In the last video, I talked about some tips and tricks for long haul or overnight flights, and in this video, we're going to be taking it back a bit and going over some really important tips and tricks to consider when you are in those initial planning phases of your trip. These are some of the tips that I've acquired from all of my travels, including our 4-month backpacking trip in 2021. And I am also using these techniques right now. If you like travel content and everything that entails, including the planning, then my channel is definitely the space for you. We are currently planning an indefinite amount of time backpacking trip through Asia. We're leaving on June 14th, and I'm documenting everything that we're doing to get ready for this trip. We're traveling full-time just using our carry-on bags. So if you want to see the itinerary planning, the packing process, the visa application process, then definitely subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my videos. Without further ado, here are the steps that I take in planning an international trip, and hopefully they're useful for you planning yours. The first step is always figuring out where you want to go. This process can be a little intimidating if you don't have your heart set on a destination right off the bat. For me, I like to look at the anywhere listings on sites like Airbnb, and then also check out Google Flights and look at the globe map for flights leaving from your city to destinations around the world. If you don't have specific dates in mind, check out the flexible dates tool on Google Flights and Airbnb so that you can get the cheapest option if your heart isn't set on a specific week. This tip is really good to give you some inspiration. Maybe you find a really cool Airbnb and you plan your trip around that. Step number 2 is to set your budget. Once you have an idea of where you're going based off of the anywhere options on Airbnb and Google Flights, you can get an idea of how much that's going to cost, and that number is going to shape the rest of your planning. The next step can really come in at any time, but I like to do it early on in the process just so I know how difficult it's going to be to get into the country, and that is to start looking at the visas for entry. There are a bunch of different types of visas that countries offer, and the visa requirements change based off of your home country. Luckily for me, Canada is well liked around the world, so we don't have an issue with visas generally. A lot of places offer free visa on arrival. You can stay for like maximum 30 days or 90 days, for example, in the EU, in the Schengen region. The other popular type of visa is the e-visa that you apply for before you leave, and then you have it to provide to the customs agent when you land. I like to look into this early because if it's going to be hard for you to get into the country, or if you're only allowed to stay for 14 days, for example, that's going to shape the tone of the rest of your trip. And it's good to know before you start putting money down and booking things in. Step number 4 is to go ahead and book your flight. This is one of those things that you are going to want to lock in sooner because the prices really fluctuate when it comes to flights. And in my experience, they do get more expensive the closer you get to your departure date. Step number 5 is another step that can really go at any point in the process, but I like to start looking into it early, and that is gather your travel insurance. It's really important to have a travel insurance policy just in case something goes wrong and you need to get medical attention. And also some countries may require proof of travel insurance as part of the documents you need to provide to customs as you're entering the country. I'm from Alberta, and the travel insurance policy that I used when we went to Europe was through AMA. You can shop around a little bit and you can use the price comparison tool on the websites to get the best deal. I typically go just for medical coverage. You can get flight insurance as well and car insurance, but we don't tend to rent cars, and flight insurance is not high up on my list of priorities, but it may be on yours. I'll be doing a full video on the basics of traveling, including travel insurance, credit cards, SIM cards, all of that stuff as we get closer to us leaving, so definitely subscribe and stay tuned for that video. Step number 6, this is where I tend to start looking at booking in accommodations. You can do this before you book your flight through the benefit of free cancellation policies. I know on Airbnb, they let you get your money back typically if you cancel a week before your reservation. Sites that I like to use for accommodations are Airbnb, Vrbo, and Booking.com. Usually I always preach to book directly with the carrier when it comes to third-party sites, but I am a genius tier on Booking.com, so we do get a 15% discount, which is why I tend to book through them. One thing to keep in mind is if you are using sites like Booking.com and Expedia, they are great for seeing the wide range of hotels offered in the area, but when you're narrowing in on a couple, it's best to check directly with that hotel website for the prices because they may be cheaper. It's definitely always better to book with the carrier, but sometimes Booking.com offers good deals. Step number 7 is my favorite step. It's planning your itinerary. So when you're going about this, I like to search up blank week itinerary for on Google for your destination. So if you're going for 3 weeks, do 3-week itinerary and then go through all of the results. I specifically like to look at blog posts from people where their name is in the blog title or something about backpacking as opposed to things like TripAdvisor, because I feel like you get a lot of really cool recommendations on those websites. These itineraries will give you a good idea of the flow of your trip. For example, as we're planning our trip through Asia, we wanted an idea of the direction that we should travel, that most people our age that are also backpacking will also travel in. So it's really helpful to know that you should start in Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam, for example, and go upwards towards Hanoi. Step number 8, once you have the itinerary in mind, map it out so you can visually see it. I like using MapQuest to do this, but you can only add 26 destinations. MapQuest also gives you the driving directions to get from each location. I really like to use it just to visualize the area and the route because we tend to take trains or ferries or other forms of public transit. However, it's really great to be able to visualize where you're going. Another pro tip when it comes to mapping is to download the mapped area of a city in Google Maps so you can use it offline. This is something we did all the time when we were in Europe. To do this, you open the Google Maps app on your phone. You must be connected to the internet when you do this. Look up a destination and then at the bottom tap the name of the destination, tap more, and then tap download map, and you will be able to access this map and use it like a Google Maps offline. That's at least the instructions for doing it on an iPhone. Tip number 9 is to finish booking in your accommodation. When we went to Europe, we only booked things 3 weeks in advance because it's really important to give yourself time to breathe, especially if you're going on a long-term vacation or if you're backpacking. This gives you the opportunity to meet people on the way and change your itineraries slightly. The only thing to be aware of is long-term stays. If you are booking a month at a time in a specific Airbnb or Vrbo, then you should definitely book that in advance so that the property does not become unavailable. The other thing to keep in mind when it comes to not booking in accommodation or transportation ahead of time is that sometimes your visas will need you to show proof of accommodation or proof of an exiting ticket from the country. Along that line, step number 10 is to start looking at your modes of transportation. Like I said, we love taking public forms of transit, and we love the trains when we were in Europe. So that was something we booked ahead of time in those 3-week intervals just to ensure we were locking in the best prices. But having an idea of the train, bus, and ferry schedules ahead of time will help you to budget and also ensure that you're getting to your pre-booked hotels reservations on time. Number 11 is do some light research. This was one of my biggest regrets from Europe, was that I felt like I didn't fully understand the sites we were seeing. I just knew that we were going to them because I had planned them, if that makes sense. Like, for example, I wish I knew more of the history of the churches and cathedrals we were seeing, especially when we were in Italy. And doing some light research ahead of time, I think will really make you appreciate what you're seeing in person in front of you, more so than if you're just learning about it at the site. Step number 12 is get an idea of what you need to pack. Doing this early on will give you room to purchase anything that you need. A lot of the itinerary websites will also give you an idea of things that they brought with them on their trips, but it's also really important to check the weather of the destination that you're heading to. Definitely double check whether or not it's the rainy season or the dry season, if it's the high season or the low season, because all of these will impact how you're supposed to dress. I'm a firm believer that even if you're going to a warm destination, you should always bring a light cover up or a light sweater because everywhere it gets cold and windy and I hate being cold. If you need some packing info, feel free to check out some of my other packing videos that I've made. I will link them above, and I have a lot of packing content coming, so stay tuned for that. Number 13 is really important. Be thorough about researching the customs info and the other documentation that you need to be in that country. Like I briefly mentioned, in addition to your visa, you might need other documentations like proof of exit from the country, proof of funds, travel insurance, etc. You also might need an international driving permit if you're planning on renting a car. We did when we went to Rarotonga because we wanted to rent mopeds, and we just had to do a quick driving test while we were there, but there are different regulations based off of where you go. Like I said, we don't usually rent cars, so I don't have a lot of experience in this area, but it's definitely something you should look into. You can find all of this info on the visa pages or under the travel advisory section on your home country government page. Be up to date with your immunizations and check if you need any additional immunizations to enter the country. You can find all of this info on your government website or checking with your doctor. Number 14 is a bit of an optional fun one. It's try to pick up the language if you're going somewhere new. It's really fun to try to speak with the locals, and when we were in Europe, we found that they really appreciated it when I tried to use my broken French to speak to people in France. It's just a really nice gesture to show that you are trying to actively participate in the culture. If you haven't fully picked up the language, a great fallback is to download the language on the Google Translate app. It's super quick, super easy, great to be able to translate signs or announcements that you're hearing. When you download the language in the app, you can access it without data or internet. So if you don't have a SIM card, this is a great option. So that is it for the steps. I just want to end with 2 more recommendations. So step 15, don't go overboard with the planning. I find if you get too sucked into the research and the planning before you go, you'll either be bored of the destination or the sites won't live up to your expectations once you get there. Definitely try to leave some parts up for imagination so you really appreciate it when you get there. Also, if you give yourself some wiggle room in your schedule, you'll be able to pick up the odd day trip or the recommendation from a fellow traveler or a local, and I find that adds a really unique charm to your trip. Before you go, do not forget to 1, let your bank know that you are traveling so they don't lock your card, especially if you aren't using a travel credit card. Number 2, arrange for house and pet sitting and for someone to bring in your garbage cans or just check on your house while you're gone. Number 3, if you're traveling with carry-on or if you're checking a bag, check with the liquids requirements. It's usually the same everywhere, but also make sure that your carry-on and your checked bags both fit the weight requirements. Number 4, download your airline's app before you leave. A lot of airlines, this is how you access in-flight entertainment, and you can also get your boarding pass and any flight updates in the app. And number 5, along the topic of long-haul flights, check out my latest video for how to prep for a long-haul flight and for some ideas of things you can do in the air. If you like this kind of content, Kristen and I are going through all of these steps right now as we're planning our 6+ month backpacking trip through Southeast Asia. So follow along. We'll be posting a video shortly on our visa application process and all of the information regarding visas you need to know about backpacking in Asia. So if you're interested in the content that I have coming up prepping for this trip, definitely subscribe and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you later. Bye.